the speaker series, we have summer programming, we have some research internships, we have some activist internships on the go. And I wanted to invite two of our interns, Haley Swan, who is head of Beauty for Ashes. If you don't know her, some of you I know her from her floor. Beauty for Ashes is our work against human trafficking, and there's increasing amount of work around and working against human trafficking. And Haley's just going to share a little bit. And then Christina Marcial is working in our immigration intern. If you don't know Christina yet, you've got to get to know Christina. You got to get to know Haley. These are really talented young women. And Christina is going to tell us a little bit about an event coming up next week. And I just wanted to give them the floor.
Hello, I'm Haley. I've been working for the CJR for about a year and a half now. Whoa, like 2 actually. Time flies. Part of our heritage as a Christian university is like participating in the body of Christ and recognizing Christ as the Redeemer of the world. And a lot of this work that we do in the Center for Justice and Reconciliation entails acknowledging a lot of suffering and a lot of really discouraging subject matter, including human trafficking, which is one of the most horrific realities that is part of our world today. And the work that I do with Beauty for Ashes is to kind of, our hope is to communicate in a way that's grounding us in the hope that we have, that in recognizing suffering and recognizing depravity, that we have hope to bring restoration and hope to bring healing to the world. And so what we do is we use art, research, music, and in a way that the congregation and groups of people can engage with these issues, so we can learn a little bit more about what does human trafficking look like in the world, and that we can be a little bit more focused and grounding as we pray, because we believe that when we pray, things happen and there's movement. And so our hope is to cultivate like an understanding of the issue and ways to communicate intentionally without exploiting the audience or the victims, and then mobilize the church into becoming active participants in the work of redemption in the world. So we have an event coming up on campus in partnership with First Church of the Nazarene, which is also on campus, so handy. It's this Tuesday from 7:30 to 8:30. It's going to be like a prayer worship night. We'd love for any of you to come. We'll be working with their high school group. So 7:30 to 8:30 in the Ellipse Chapel, which is like just around the river bend from Brown. So that's happening next Tuesday night. And now I'm going to pass the mic to my lovely comrade, Christina.
Thank you, lovely comrade. So my name is Christina Marcial. I am the intern for the Center of Justice and Reconciliation. My internship is based on immigration, and pretty much like my hope with the internship is to really just engage in like pure and honest dialogue about immigration and how it relates in our daily lives, and really just learning to see the undocumented migrant as a brother, a sister, a father, a mother, and really relating to them in a level that just the way that God would want us to treat them and like have compassion and love for them. So if you are interested in the issue of immigration, we set up a Facebook where I update with media, documentaries, research, photos, anything that has to do with the issue of immigration. And if you would just sign up on the email list, I can forward you. And also we have La Paz Summit. I put the flyer here, so if you guys are interested, take a look at it. And it will be April 20th to the 21st, next Saturday, Friday and Saturday in Pasadena, California. And pretty much it's going to be pretty fun. So.
It's called the Peacemaking and Justice Summit. It's at Pasadena First Church of the Nazarene. There's speakers coming from, if you know John Perkins, a legendary urban prophet, really works against injustices of all kinds around the country. He's going to be coming. He's in his waning years, and he's agreed to come up all the way from Jackson, Mississippi to come to this conference. And we have a bunch of workshops, and all of us are doing workshops up at the conference. And it's for Point Loma students. If you want to register, there's information here. Marissa.
Yeah, my name is Marissa, and I'm another intern here. A lovely comrade, is what I like to say. That's where you are. My internship is called Sabbath Economics, and it's just like a way to kind of look at like how we ethically engage in economics and like what that looks like really. It's kind of a difficult thing to figure out, but I like kind of like working with a lot of different people, pulling people together and seeing how we're kind of already connected to people, you know, whether we're on campus or like people that are making our clothes in really faraway countries that we might not otherwise think about. So I ran the Roots of Giving Fair last year, which is like one of the big events that my internship does. So just like to work and come to all these cool things and hang out with all these nice people. So.
Yeah. We give them a hand. They were very hard work. Very hard work. So if anybody's interested in internships, how many of you are not Point Loma students? I'd like to say a special welcome to those of you who come from off campus. Almost a third of the room tonight, so a special welcome. But for those of you that are students, how many of you are here tonight because there's extra credit dangling out there for you? I love this, right? Look around. This is a good thing. Extra credit. Don't even be shy. That's the reason why you came. It's a really important thing, right? Because what happens when professors give extra credit for coming to these kind of events is that it's tied back to the classroom and what you're learning. There's reflection pieces tied to it. And I want more of that to happen. So you encourage folks to do their extra credit options at the Brewed Awakening. And thank you for being here tonight, all of you. All right, so one other quick announcement from, where's Bethany? Bethany Tipton, would you come up real quick? And then, as soon as Bethany's done, I'm going to ask Daniel if he'll come and introduce our speakers for tonight. Thank you.
First, Rachel has something.
Okay.
One more of this.
Okay.
We've already overwhelmed you, but next Saturday, the 21st, we're going to have our first, hopefully annual Trans-Border Nonprofit Fair, where we're going to have nonprofits from both Tijuana and San Diego that work on border regions come to campus. It's going to be on Cunningham Lawn, which is like over by the library, between the library and the CAC. And we're going to have at 9 o'clock a panel of people that have interned or worked in Tijuana or in Mexico. And then we're going to have time to like network with nonprofits, some that have job opportunities, some that have volunteer opportunities, interns. So we need more until 10 till 1. So if you have any questions, talk to Mark Tucker here or me or Marissa. And so hope you can make it. That's the 21st. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks Rachel. More information. So does anyone in this room have a minor? If you do, raise your hand. Okay, so minors are awesome, and I don't know if you know about this, but the sustainability, our school has a sustainability studies minor. It partners with the Center for Justice and Reconciliation. One thing I love about this minor is that it offers you to take classes from different departments. So it allows you to experience the business world, to experience a science class that you wouldn't normally take. And the best part about it is that a lot of your GE requirements fulfill it. So you may already be like halfway there to getting a sustainability studies minor. You may not realize it. So I encourage you to consider joining our sustainability studies minor crew. And if you have any questions, we have a pamphlet with like the course requirements, or you can email Dr. Watkins. Cool. If you feel moved after this event, you can join. Okay, Dana. Come on. Do you have the same sustainability studies minor? Okay. Well, that's nice too.
All right, well, my name is Daniel Burden. I am the president of the Students for Environmental Action and Awareness, our campus environmental club. And we are extremely pleased tonight to be welcoming our two guests, both of whom are very involved with environmental issues at the border, which many of us may not realize are yet another one of the ways in which these things are all very connected: immigration and our laws towards Mexico, and our laws towards immigration, and our laws towards environmental regulation and national security. All of it ties together at borders, whatever it is. All right, so our first speaker for tonight is Dr. Crooks, who is the research coordinator at the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve, which is down, basically right on the border where they do a lot of the work to study kind of both the wildlife that live in that very unique habitat, but then also they do some research on some evolution and things like that go on there as well. So he will be here to speak with us about that. He's also worked with Dr. Cummings, one of our environmental science professors here at Point Loma, who's done a lot of his research on contagious bacteria in the water in the Tijuana River and other areas like that. So after Dr. Crooks speaks, we will have a 5-ish minute question and answer session, 5-10 minute question and answer session with him, and then we'll move on to Dan Murphy, who has been an activist with Surfrider for 10 years and is currently the campaign manager for their No BS campaign, that's No Border Sewage. And then we'll have time for question and answers after that as well. So without further ado, we will welcome up Dr. Crooks. Thank you very much.
It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's a different sort of venue for me, and I'm not sure I've done much conscience rattling. But I will say that this is a place, and what I'm going to talk about, the Tijuana River Estuary, is a place I really care about. What I'm going to talk about is one of the ways that I've addressed, in the program I'm in, addressed taking care of a place that's special. Right? And I come up through the academic ranks, getting graduate degrees and things like that, but it always troubled me a little. I was like, I want to make a difference, right? I want to do something about this. I don't want to just write a paper and write, oh, you should be afraid of this or be afraid of that. I wanted to be in a place where we could translate science and research into management and action and education and outreach. And that's the place I'm at now, at the Research Reserve. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, so most of my talk will be about my program, which is the Research and Management Program, and how we're translating science, what we do down there, into action. And I'm okay. If you have questions along the way, feel free to ask. I thought it would be clever and save my battery and dim the screen, but dimmed it to death. I can't see what I'm doing. Sorry. Right? That'll work, no problem. It's a map, it'll figure it out. Yeah, just a second, sorry about that. I'm pressing the button, but I don't know what's happening. Sure. Yeah. No, we'll get it. Interested. Yeah. So Danielle here works with me down at the Research Reserve, so she's seen me flounder before. Yeah, this is really strange. It's just not coming out looking good. Because you have slides too, right, Dan? So you need to do that. Right.
Can you start it?
Yeah, when in doubt, reboot, huh? Yeah, the screen just went dark. No, it's okay. It's this. That's the happy map sound. So good so far. Yeah. A good start. Right. So as this is going, let me just say a few things, and we'll sort of get to this slide, or maybe when I get to this slide, I'll just sort of skip it. So the Research Reserve where I work is, I've already mentioned it, it's this complex sort of amalgam, an association of all sorts of different entities, basically working together to try and increase our ability to understand the Tijuana River Reserve. And that's where I come in, sort of the science and the research to increase what we know about the system, but then translate that information into education and outreach and to decision making. Danielle here is the community outreach coordinator, so works with volunteers and helps gets docents going and volunteer restoration guides. We have an outreach program. We have a community, sorry, I said community outreach. We have our coastal training program, which is outreach to decision makers and politicians and regulators, which is really great for me because often I find out something, or a researcher like Dr. Cummings figures out something that's pretty important that people should know about. So what I can do then is go to that program and talk about and tell her these sorts of issues, and it gets transferred to decision makers. And it's pretty rare for someone like me in this sort of role, sort of pushing out science, to have someone to walk over to and be able to speak about these sorts of issues. We have an education program which focuses on K through 12 education, which is great because lessons that I've learned in our research program, for example, on invasive species, of those prominent species getting moved around the world. I've gone to that education program and said, this is pretty cool, you should tell your students about that. And literally, I think I'm a figure in one of those stories. The guy that's grumpy and this computer doesn't work, so it can't really be me. But literally, that a lesson from our research program, and more so even the sort of research that we do, has been incorporated into a lesson that K through 12 students see, not just in Imperial Beach down where we are, but throughout the county. And we also have a stewardship program, which is basically how the actual land management. So all of these sorts of things get translated into action. The reserve was established by the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972, which means what we do is very much about management. We're about taking lessons and applying it to decision making. Right? I think we're about ready to go here, so I'll give you the preamble on the research reserve or get to the place. Well, I'll just start as well. So what I'm going to talk about today is really estuarine ecosystems. And the nice thing about estuaries, or what makes them interesting to me, is they're really the one place on Earth where the three major habitat types come together: the land, the sea, and the fresh water. Right? It's the only place on Earth where all of these things come to bear. So I'm trained as an oceanographer. I did my degree at Scripps, and I thought I'd be doing ocean stuff. But when we're thinking about wetlands, we have to think about all of those things. So it makes these systems really complicated, really dynamic, really unique, but also very diverse, right? So we have plant animals, land animals, and marine animals all coming together. But it also means we have problems associated with all these different systems coming together as well. So I have to worry about what's going on in the ocean and what's going on in the land, and what's going on in the rivers. Almost there. I think we're there. What's going to happen? Moment of truth?
Do it.
Oh, that was good. All right, so sorry about that. Okay, so that's me. Still thinking, we're getting there. Something not happy. All right, excellent. So that's estuarine wetlands. I've already talked about this. The one place on Earth where the three major features come together, and it's a really fascinating place for a biologist like me to work, to have to think about these things. So why do we care about wetlands and systems like the Tijuana River Valley? And one of the reasons I want to start with this and focus on this because somewhere like the Tijuana River Valley has a reputation, and we're going to hear more about the pollution issues. I'm going to talk about trash and sediment and all the problems they got at a border and things like that. But it's really important to understand why we care about places like this. And for me personally, I like the place, but what I'm particularly broadly interested in is these sort of urban ecosystems. And it's a sort of a great example out here. How you can have these slices of nature in these huge urban settings. And if you help them along and give them a little bit of elbowing, they can persist and do pretty well. So wetlands do all sorts of different things for us. They have economic values, both indirect and direct, so people can take out species that can fish in them, or they do it sustainably. That works well. Or for ecotourism, that sort of thing. They're important for recreation and aesthetics. You go walk your dog, ride a bike, just go look at the place, bird watching, the habitat for species. They provide a really important sort of environmental buffering. They're these sponges, there's these cushions in between the land and the sea and the fresh water that can help buffer the sorts of effects of both the land moving into the ocean and vice versa. Also, they turn out to be really important in terms of the global carbon cycle, thinking about the sort of global warming issue. If you look at per unit acre or per unit area of any system on Earth, coastal wetlands are about the best at sucking in carbon and trapping it there, just the way these systems work. They're hugely important. They trap way more carbon than rainforests and things like that. So they're very, very efficient. So, and some people have done some economic analysis in terms of ecosystem services and the values of these systems. And estuaries and swamps and things like that come out at the top of the list. And a whole bunch of stuff goes into these calculations, but these systems are incredibly valuable. And sometimes they're underappreciated. People call them swamps and have a negative connotation. But I think it's really important to get around that. Of course, one of the problems that we have is these coastal salt marshes we have are among the most threatened systems on the planet. There's these little specks of habitat on the fringe of these giant ocean basins where the land meets the sea. Most people, you've probably heard this, live near the coast, and more people are expected to move towards the coast in the coming decades. So there's intense pressure on these systems, and we've lost a lot of them. In Southern California, we're lucky that we have a lot of these systems, right? But they have been pretty well hammered. The estimates for California in general is we lost about 90% of our coastal wetlands. And you actually know these systems. If you've driven on the 5 there, you drive right through the middle of Penasquitos Lagoon and San Diego, where the racetrack is, in San Diego and Gratifitas and things like that. So you actually know these systems, and you drive through them and you see them. But part of the problem is you're driving. And there's freeways right through the middle of it, and there's railroad tracks, and there's the coast highway right along here, and there's houses right up to the edge, and dunes. And that's not the case down here at the Tijuana River, which we'll be talking about tonight. It's a relatively intact system, so that's what makes it sort of special, not just in San Diego, but in really all of Southern California. That is the one system, despite everything we're going to hear tonight about how messed up it is, that's intact. And that's what makes it special. It's at the end of a pretty big watershed, about 1,700 square miles. This is the U.S.-Mexico border. This is the watershed. Much of it is in really good shape, so the upper watershed in this part of San Diego, probably some of the best coastal mountain range habitats in the whole region. The pine forest, and if you get up here, sort of near Descanso and Lake Marina and things like that, are really nice. Transitioning to riparian zones and down into salt marsh. So all sorts of natural features. And then there's a variety of different land uses. So there's urban, obviously the border colors a lot of it. The river valley, Tijuana River Valley has some equestrian, there's some agriculture, there's some up in Tijuana, there's obviously all sorts of industry. What I'm going to talk about tonight, and most of what we think about down here, this is where the research we observed is down here, is colored by the fact that even though almost 3/4 of the watershed's in Mexico, almost all the water that we get drains into Mexico, goes through the city of Tijuana and back into the river valley, about 5 or 6 miles east of the ocean, and then flows west towards the ocean. So the fact that Tijuana is just upstream and uphill from us really colors a lot of what we think about. So I hardly think about what's going on up over here too much. This is really where all the action is in terms of what we're trying to understand and manage. And again, I talked about the Tijuana River estuary, and again, it's this intact system. There's a bit of beaches, there's a bit of houses on the dunes here, but this rest of the system is pretty well intact. This is where the river comes in. So we get this place where we get ocean going to beach to sand dunes, to tidal channels, to salt marsh, movement on up into the transition zone, these big broad buffer areas, which definitely don't exist in much of Southern California. This would be paved over. Into moving upstream into riparian, that's where the riverbank associated systems, and up onto these coastal mesas, and we get all that in the river valley.
I have a really quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Is estuary and wetlands, is that interchangeable?
Oh, that's such a good question.
If it's too complicated, you can just-
No, that's a good question. And we use it pretty loosely down here. We actually get in arguments about it. In Southern California, for the most part, they're pretty much interchangeable.
Okay.
Because most of our estuarine systems are completely dominated by wetlands. But in reality, and I use them interchangeably. But in reality, an estuary is a place where the river meets the sea. So you don't necessarily have to have a wetland. A wetland is that sort of wet land. It's the interface between where something is wet and something is dry. So you can have freshwater wetlands, vernal pools. There's other types of wetlands. The values is pretty loose, and that's a good question. I should be clear about that. Yeah. All right. Thanks. All right, so again, some of what's going on and why we care so much about this place. Basically, every habitat you go to in the river valley has endangered species associated. You have cloud rails and salt marsh, leaf-billed sparrow, another endangered bird lives in the riparian, the willow forest. On the beaches, we have terns and plovers. And basically, it's because we have real estate. We have places for these things to go. Most of Southern California, it's gone. All right? So now I'm going to sort of move into the threats, and this is, again, it's sort of, I want to emphasize that this place is special, and we need to protect it, and we need to care about it, and there's a lot going on there. But I am going to talk about the threats to the system, and just in general, this sort of estuarine wetlands system in general. So the one thing we can do to these species is these systems, we can add or remove species, right? We can take away species by overexploitation. So Tijuana, there was probably a fair bit of shellfish harvesting. In other systems, we know there's been a lot, like Mission Bay. There was a lot of shellfish harvesting, and people would comment, man, we used to catch bucketfuls of these beautiful shells. I wonder why they're not there anymore now, because you got bucketfuls of these beautiful shells. So these overexploitation is a big deal. But we also have this problem, I think I may have mentioned this, with this invasive species issue, where we add things that come in from other parts of the world and that can potentially cause problems. And I'll talk about this a little bit. We have habitat degradation issues. This is the border fence sort of cutting off some of these side canyons we have. Penasquitos Lagoon, up near Torrey Pine with the Coast Highway and railroad tracks. We change hydrology by channelizing rivers, the Tijuana River in Tijuana. We affect how much sediment comes into systems, and obviously pollutants and debris and sewage and toxics and trash are huge sorts of issues. And then sort of underlying all of this, or maybe overlying all of this, is this issue of climate change and sea levels rising. And we can discuss how much people are causing it, and I don't think anyone knows exactly, but climates have been changing forever and will continue to change. So it's just something we need to think about. So what our program focuses on is adaptive management, which is basically coupling research and science, which is what I'm trying to do, with management in order to track progress, learn lessons, and improve the systems over time. So you don't just cut down a bunch of non-native weeds that are causing this problem and hope it works. You do some experiments and science with it and make sure it's working out the way that you want. All right, and a lot of what we do is monitoring. All right, I've already talked about sort of the research reserves. So the ecosystem monitoring, a lot of what we spend our time with is basically what we call assessing vital signs. We're just taking the pulse of the system. We're just out there sort of day after day, month after month, year after year, just seeing what's going on and trying to keep track of changes. So we have these things thrown out in the water, which measure temperature, water temperature, and how salty it is, and how much oxygen there is. We measure things like how much nutrients in chlorophyll A, which is a measure of sort of the plant life in the water, how salty the soil is, what plants are there, the seafloor invertebrates, the little snails and clams, and things like fish. And again, just keep on doing it and see what happens. And there's a lot of value to it, and you end up with some interesting things. This is some of the data that we got. This is water depth data from one of our data loggers about 13 months ago. Does anyone have any guesses what's causing this? This is a sort of nice tidal signal with tides going up and down, and everything gets a little crazier for a day or so. I guess that you can't see that. This is actually the tsunami and the earthquake in Japan. So we have these data loggers out, which is just measuring water going up and down. And in a little estuary, 3,000 miles away, we're seeing that basically tsunami, and we're seeing the whole Pacific Ocean rocking around from this giant earthquake, landslide, and tsunami that resulted from it. So again, this sort of tides coming up and down, and all of a sudden you get these really spiky signals. Water levels are going up, and someone described it as the Pacific Ocean ringing like a bell. And we saw that for a few days, so you never know what you're going to find. And people are actually using this data from other reserves on the coast to understand what was happening with this tsunami and how it was propagating across the ocean. Never expected to be a tsunami warning system in the Tijuana River, but we were able to track that. We also, can see things like fish kills. This is in October '05, and all of a sudden there's all these dead fish around. And this happens once in a while, but you want to understand why this is going on. Right? There's some sort of toxic contamination, that someone dumped something. But again, we're out there, we're keeping tracks of things, and we figured out it's this oxygen depletion. This is another graph, I don't want to give you too many graphs, looking at oxygen in the water over the course of a few days here. And basically, 0 is oxygen, right? And anything below 2 to 3 is pretty stressful. So what you see is, especially at night when it's dark, and some people have basic biology here, when things aren't photosynthesizing and producing oxygen, it tends to crash. And so we saw these crashes of nighttime crashes of oxygen. And it turns out that we did fish monitoring, and it turns out this fish isn't usually in the estuary. Because this isn't that dramatic, this happens. But this fish isn't usually in there, so this must have been this big, it's not a herd of fish, it would be a school of fish. My oceanography degree is paying off. A school of fish came into the estuary there that's not typically there, was not set up to deal with no oxygen, and basically kicked off. So we were able to see this sort of extreme and fairly dramatic event with dead fish all over the place and figure out what was going on. Another thing that I've been working on is this invasive species issue that I mentioned, and this calling them invaders at the interface especially with this nasty tree here. And again, as I mentioned, the estuary is a place where the land, the sea, and the fresh water come together. My graduate degree is on marine invasive species. But here I have to think about things coming from the land. We have to worry about snails and non-native foxes and trees and these other trees choking out our river channels. We have to worry about things coming in the river. And these are actually things we do here in San Diego, like kelp and molly, an aquarium species. That's something that we find around the edges. These are intentionally planted to eat mosquitoes and plants and some little worms. We have to worry about river things. And then I work most of my time with these things coming in from the ocean, right? And these sort of marine invaders. And these non-native species is a really interesting issue because it sort of interested me scientifically because it's an opportunity to see how species and ecosystems respond when you add something that doesn't really belong there. But also presents some management issues and sort of some interesting ethical issues. And even about this issue of invasives, and there's a lot of discussion about, we call them aliens and exotics, and you must kill them, and that sort of thing. And it's difficult to know what to do sometimes. I tend to say that, you know, any species isn't necessarily good or bad. If it's causing problems, then we might have to do something about it. What we need to do something about, though, is this sort of willy-nilly ramping up of how we're moving species around, and sort of just moving things all over the globe. And I've called this issue connectivity. This is actually a map I pulled off the website last night. It's sailwx.info of all this. I don't even know if it's all the ships, but it's just sort of known ships on the oceans of the world. This was last night. And each one of these ships has stuff growing on its hulls, and it has big tanks with water and fish swimming around in them. They're swimming all over, and so this sort of massive homogenization. And I've been to places like Tokyo Bay and in Australia. You see all the same species appearing in all the same areas, and people call it sort of McDonaldization of the world. It's like you have these sort of common species occurring everywhere, and it really is the case that San Diego looks like Tokyo Bay, which looks like Sydney Harbor. So we're losing sort of the uniqueness of these systems by all of these things moving around. So this is definitely something we're concerned about and pushing on. All right, so sedimentation then. This is something in terms, we're going to hear about sort of the sewage issues and the water issues, and that's a major problem for us. But one of the things that we focused on, particularly, partly because there's so much good work being done by other people on this sort of sewage issue, is this issue of sedimentation and this problem of excessive sediment coming into these systems. Here's some photographs of some of the typical hillsides up into Tijuana. And again, Tijuana is up on a hill. The estuary and the river valley is down below. So we have people coming in and cutting away vegetation on highly erosive slopes. When it rains, this stuff tends to pour into the system. This was a salt marsh. This is in October of '04. We had a big rain event, and like 18 acres of salt marsh is just completely covered in sediment, not even there anymore. So this sedimentation is a huge issue. This is a picture of that area. This is beforehand. So this is high salt marsh with endangered birds and even some actually like a cool snake species that tends to like this sort of habitat hanging out here. And then a few months later, this massive storm event just completely burying it in sediment. So the sedimentation is a massive problem for us. Partly because we're an intertidal system, right? And the tidal range in our estuary is probably about my height, 6 feet or so. And so that's always underwater and then never underwater. So you add that much sediment to a system, you're completely changing what that system is like and smothering it so it's not even there. So the sediment's a big deal for us. So we have this three-pronged approach for dealing with sediment. The first is source control, the second is intercepting the sediment, and the last is trying to increase the functioning of the receiving system. So the first is source control, and this really probably has the biggest connection to what we're talking about tonight. I don't have one slide on it, but if I wouldn't have stumbled so much to begin with, I would have milked this a little more. But this really is important for us because we're going to, this is trying to deal with the problem at the source. And going into Mexico, we're working in the sub-watersheds in Mexico. This is Colorado's Canyon up here, which is upstream from us down here. You can see this giant scrape on the hillside here. That's just this big load of dirt that's just waiting to come down our way. But if you recall sort of this sort of picture, these are the ways that people are living in these canyons. And it's usually the poorest of the poor. And we talk about our sort of immigration issues here in the United States, but what we need to remember is that Tijuana itself has a massive immigration issue. Most of the people who are living in this canyon here are not from Tijuana. They're from other parts of Mexico, from Central America, coming up to the border, even to work on the border, or work in Mexico. Unemployment rate in Mexico, last I heard, was like 2 or 3%, a quarter of what it is here. So very low unemployment rate. Now, wages aren't all that high, but at least there's money to be had. Or people think that they're going to cross the border. So we have here as a community that doesn't really view this place as home. They're first of all, they have limited means of even surviving, but they don't view this place as home. So what we're really trying to do is we're going into this canyon, we're working, trying to improve conditions down there. And this is an example of a wall made out of tires. Tires is one of our major pollutants, major debris in the river valley, because people pile them up just trying to get a place to live and pile them up and put a home on top of it. It rains, it all washes down our way, and we say, oh, look at our tire problem. We need to remember this is people's homes washing into our river valley. And honestly, when you're up in these areas, you tend to forget about the sediment issues downstream, because it is one of these situations that the social solution and the environmental solution are the same thing. We need sediment not coming into our system, right? So they're not in opposition at all. So we need to go work with these people, help them figure out how to use tires to make sustainable slopes so that they can live safely, not live in these sorts of conditions. So that's a huge effort for us, is working at the source, trying to do good things in the watershed in Mexico. And they help themselves, and it helps us as well. And that's really what you want, these sort of win-win situations. The second is sort of catch the sediment before it gets in there. And this is just sort of a brute force approach of digging big pits and catching the stuff before it's smothered our system down here. And we do it, it's really difficult, it costs a lot of money, but we do it. And the last is something I'm particularly focused on, is increasing the ability of the system downstream to be able to handle all this material coming our way. The one thing we want to do is increase the tidal prism of the system, which is the amount of water coming in and out. So the more water comes in and out of the system, if you dig out the dirt that accumulates in there, it's actually better at sort of moving it out to itself, to the ocean where it belongs. So that's what we work on. We want to create lost habitat. We want to beneficially use anything we dig out. All that dirt, we don't want to put it in a dump and want to do something with it. We want to try to restore a whole eroding hillside, or we want to put it on a beach. And really important, we want to conduct research to steer future actions so we can get better at it. So just wrapping up. Our big push now is there's a whole bunch of agencies and entities involved in the river valley thinking about not just this sediment, but sediment and traps, and broadly the recovery of the ecosystem down there. This Tijuana River Valley recovery strategy, this Tijuana River Valley recovery team. And it's this really interesting place. We have great habitats and species. People live down there, they recreate down there, they go to the beach. We have border patrol, we have military, and there's room for all of this. And that's what we're really trying to figure out. How can we accommodate all these things and continue to improve the system? And this is something I spent a lot of time on, boy, a lot of meetings. This became known as the Crooks map. And wow. When you start beating over people's houses and you say, you shall be habitat, it gets really interesting. That's what we're kind of trying to do here. But I was backed up by like piles and piles of documents and plans and things like that. But basically what we're trying to do is use sort of an ecosystem service perspective. And that is trying to understand how ecosystems can affect human well-being. And one way to do that is things that I tend to like, right, is have a healthy functioning system that supports native species, and that you can see, you can go to a place where you can, this is a representation of what a system like this should really look like. So that's an ecosystem service, that's important. But other things these systems can do is if you have a healthy functioning system, it shouldn't flood as much. It should, and we have big flooding issues, and people are living down here in the floodplain, and they flood all the time. Let's figure out ways. We're not going to move them out, but help them be safe, because a healthy functioning system will be safer for everybody. It'll be able to, big broad wetlands will be able to help with the sewage issue and help clean up the water. That's what wetlands do. So this is a big push for us now. And this is beginning, like, literally as we speak, and how to implement this plan and begin to envision a river valley where we continue to see improvements and have room for species and habitats, but also have room for people to come down, live down there, work down there, and enjoy the place. All right? So there are all sorts of people involved in this, and I'm really sorry for the monkey business starting up here. Do we have questions? Yeah.
Can you talk about how much the hydrology has changed down there? And just in particular, is that related to invasive species like tamarisk, the hydrology change?
That's a good question. Yeah, good. I can answer that kind of question. That's good, that's good. Yeah, so it's changed a lot. And one of the biggest changes to the system is that we have Tijuana upstream from us. And I didn't really talk about this too much, but I didn't really talk about the sewage treatment plant too much. But what happens is we have, in general, in Southern California, I would say our biggest problem in Southern California has to do with water. In our coastal systems is too much, right? It sounds a little crazy to think about, but we live in a Mediterranean climate system that has, right, so basically, how much rain have we had this year? 8 inches, and it's rained little today, maybe rain on Friday, but may not rain again until October. So we live in these systems, this area that would be very dry during the summer, basically no fresh water input, right? And that's the way that these systems have evolved, sort of wettish winters, dry summers. So the biggest problem we have is when most of the water is coming into the system, when you see water is going down the gutters, it's during the summer when people are watering their lawns and washing their cars and dumping out their swimming pools. And that's not water from here, that's water from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, that's water from the Colorado River, that's being pumped, so it's extra watershed. So it's coming from the other watersheds being moved in here and released during a time that's sort of damaging to these systems. So that's one of the biggest hydrological issues we have. But interestingly, in the Tijuana River Valley, one of the side effects of having a sewage issue is we have improved our hydrology. Because there's actually a treatment plant that catches all the fresh water. We have a treatment plant that's designed to catch the dry weather flow. So during the summer months, when let's say it's a trickle, but it's about 25 million gallons a day is what the plant can handle. That's what's coming down that river, sort of rain or shine, summer or winter. During the summer, that all gets caught, and it's treated and pumped out to sea, and we jump up and sit down and say, even if it's crystal clear, do not put it back in this river during the summer. We don't want it. We pump it out to the ocean. Clean water, we don't want any water during the summer. And what we get though during the winter, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this next, is that the plant goes beyond capacity and we have sewage issues. And in terms of the water budget, it kind of makes sense because it's coming in the winter. But in terms of contamination issues, it's a big problem. Just a word about tamarisk. Yeah, tamarisk is a problem. Like if people are familiar with the desert, going out to the desert areas, tamarisk gets into, is notorious for sucking water down. And like, it's terribly damaging to like desert ecosystems with limited water. There's some of that in here, but there's so much water, including the tides coming in and out. It's probably not affecting the hydrology too much in that, to that extent. But there's this larger issue. I just had a conference call about this morning. It's like, we have to do something about this hydrologic issue and keeping the dry season dry. Any other questions?
So,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Oh, sure.
Give it applause to So let's go ahead and, yeah, you ready? Go ahead and.
Do you trust me?
Thank you guys for having us come here. This is a beautiful campus. I grew up here and I've never
Daniel.
Okay.
Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. It's a beautiful campus, and I was saying I've never been here before, so it's awesome to actually see the inside of your campus. My name is Dan Murphy. As Daniel introduced me, I'm an activist with Surfrider Foundation, and sometimes people hear activists and they think you're like some crazy, loud, obnoxious person, which I am. But we also, we like to learn a lot from scientists like Dr. Crooks, and it helps us to really take what he says and go to the public and educate the public and raise awareness. And that's really what Surfrider is. It's a group of activists that, we protect the oceans, waves, and beaches, and there's threats of development daily that we don't hear about, unfortunately. And we go to school, so we're not able to go to city council meetings to tell them, no, we don't want that toll road going through our national park or any sort of development. So that's what we do. And the Tijuana River and the Tijuana River Valley is something very special to me. I grew up here in San Diego, and it's as Jeff was saying, it's undeveloped, it's pristine, it's beautiful. You don't see places like that in California anymore. You see places, Orange County is pretty much what San Diego's trying to become, and we're trying to stop that. So Kyle is also an activist with Surfrider Foundation as well. And this is Imperial Beach, and this is an aerial view. That is the estuary to the right. You can see there, and that's the river mouth entering into the ocean. I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually a plume. A plume is when the sewage enters into the ocean from the river. It creates this kind of brown area that extends out quite a few ways, and it's pretty much impacting the whole surf line. So it's not advisable to surf in this area during the wintertime. And unfortunately, the wintertime is when San Diego surf is really good. I don't know if people surf here, surf at the cliffs, but a lot of us from IB come up to the cliffs. It's polluted, so that's why it's very crowded. And it's not here. And the Tijuana Sluice is what it's called. It's the reef break that extends out from the river mouth there. And the wave was created because a lot of the cobblestones that come down the river during the winter season form in the ocean, and that's what creates that perfect wave that comes through during the wintertime. And it is a bigger wave that can handle the bigger swells that come through. And unfortunately, it's not surfed when it is good because the sewage is impacting it. So, but this is a pretty powerful image here. And then Jeff also mentioned within the river valley, which is east of the ocean about 5 miles or so. I took this picture today, and this is the river flowing. It actually looks beautiful. It looks like somewhere in Africa or in the jungle somewhere. But unfortunately, that's about 95% sewage and sediment and a lot of nasty stuff, and that is heading westward into the ocean. And that's what creates the plume. And what you don't see, but is definitely there, is lots of plastic, lots of tires, all kinds of trash that just builds up in that native shrubbery, actually a lot of invasive shrubbery. And during the summer season when that dries up, that's what we do, is we, together with a bunch of nonprofits, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have been out there, we go out there and we clean it up. And it's not your normal beach cleanup where you're picking up gum wrapper off the beach. You're actually digging out a truck tire that takes 4 hours to get out of the ground. We collect about a pile of plastic about 10 feet high in 5 minutes. It's unbelievable. And one of the reasons you don't see a lot of plastic, or you do see a lot of plastic, is because they don't recycle plastic in Mexico. There's no incentive to, because it's not worth anything. So one of the things that we're doing with Surfrider is trying to work with companies that are actually American companies like Coca-Cola that have their plants down in Mexico and get them to have some sort of recycling program or just bark at them and be loud about it. That's what they need to hear. So, so that was today. And then Jeff already really covered this, but that's just a shot of watershed, which a third of it is in the US and 2/3 of it is in Mexico. So a lot of times we're not getting the support from the US that we really should, because it really is it's a shared problem. I'll mention later on the slides, but a lot of the tires that we do see being used for development, for houses that are built down there are tires that we pay a fee to get recycled. We expect those tires to be recycled, not shipped down to Mexico and then come back. So it's, the way I like to see it is shared pollution, and it should be a shared solution. So that's how we're trying to make that known to local, state, federal officials, and just, it takes us creating action alerts and emails and letters. And the way that the world's going now is social media, and I think we all saw that with that latest Visible Children video. That's huge. I mean, that's what it's all about, and that's what Surfrider really does, is we're trying to get these videos out there and show the federal government that, look, this small town in San Diego, we're dealing with tons of sewage, tons of trash, tons of tires, and it is our problem, so we need to work with Mexico. So I just had some facts here that in 2008, there was about 3 billion gallons of contaminated water that went into the ocean in one day, 1 24-hour period. Which is pretty amazing. Here's another aerial shot, and this is looking south, and that's at the border there in Monument Mesa, is that the 2 piles that you see there before you see all the development. And you can just see, I mean, it's amazing how much open land there is on our side, and then just how much development there is on the Mexico side. It's all packed in together. And since we are at that lower end of the watershed, you can just tell that everything how the river runs through Tijuana, that's all coming into the U.S. and out the river. And we're unfortunately at the receiving end of it. And so here's just some pictures of the canyon that Jeff talked about, Los Cerreles, and it's you can see the street on the top right picture. That's what their streets look like, and that's sewage in those cracks in the street, because the infrastructure there is really lacking the plumbing. You'll see houses that are built out of tires, and then you'll see a pipe just going into the river with sewage just coming out of it. And as Jeff mentioned, there's really just no incentive for people that aren't really from there and don't, they're working, and then all they focus on is getting a job and making money and raising their family, and having a pipe hooked up to a bucket or something to capture that sewage is really the last of their worries at that moment. So a lot of efforts being done in this canyon is groups like Wild Coast and Oscar Romo with the Tijuana Estuary going down and going to this neighborhood and really educating these people on how to recycle, how to take care of their trash, and how to make pervious pavers in the streets, and just things that we take for granted and think are, oh yeah, that's what you do. I mean, they don't think about that as much. So we just try to go down there, and it's literally just a stone's throw across the border. And if there's tours that head down there quite often with Oscar, so I definitely recommend you guys going down there. And we're going to try to put on a tour here in the next month or so. So if any of you guys want to go, just let me know. I'll leave my email. And, it's a great opportunity to really meet the people. They're great people, and they want to do good. It's just, we need to help them in that process. So, I just wanted to throw this picture and credit Mike McCoy. Everyone kind of sees the border sometimes. It's just, oh, well, it's the border. That's Mexico's problem, not our problem. But what we don't realize is the watershed is a watershed, and the animals need to use that whole watershed. And they don't understand what a border is, and that you have to be another nationality. And that's something we really need to realize. I mean, a lot of us get so caught up with the border and Mexico and U.S. and it's black and white, and it's not. I mean, I think our generation is realizing that development and the way it's going. We need to work together, and we need to take a step back for a second and not realize it's all about jobs. Sorry, I'm not going to preach, but You know, this picture just says it all. Mike McCoy has some great shots. He's another person if you ever want to learn about the area and the estuary. He's responsible for saving this estuary from becoming a marina back in the early 80s. And he went through some pretty gnarly stuff to save it, death threats and crazy stuff. So he's an awesome person. Here's some facts on that estuary that Jeff went over. And it is home to 5 endangered and 2 threatened bird species. Is that right? And over 2,500 acres of undeveloped wetland. This is the marina, and this is also Mike McCoy's shot. This is the proposed marina that they want to build in that estuary. Pretty ridiculous. And this is stuff that Surfrider, we fight stuff like this. So if this ever came back up again, you would see us freaking out. And then this is what it looks like today. This is under Dairy Mark Bridge, and I was mentioning the plastic that gets caught in the trees, and you can't see it right now, but in a couple months, this is what it's going to look like, guaranteed. And unfortunately, when we do those cleanups I mentioned, it takes all day, and we probably dent 0.02% of the trash that's there. So it is overwhelming, but what we do with those cleanups is local politicians come to these events and they see that we care. I mean, you'll see people, old men and little kids getting in and picking up syringes and picking up huge pieces of trash, and they're stoked to do it. They're so happy to be doing this, and they live in this area, and the estuary and river valley is so important to them, and it's we use those pictures and send them in videos. This is also near Dairy Mark Bridge, and this is what it would look like right now if you went and looked at it after rainfall. These are 2 local surfers, Jeff Knox and Jay Novak. Jay Novak's in the green jacket. He shapes boards down in IB, really great shaper. And I went down there with him last year, and this is the second significant rainfall last year, and you just stand there and it's like, we're not even talking, just seeing these guys look at it, and the sigh that comes out of their mouth, and they've been dealing with this their whole life, and they've seen nothing change. So it's really up to us. We're the ones that need to, these are the guys that, they're tired. They can't do anything to it anymore. I mean, they've been loud and trying to be activists and do what they can, but when you've been doing it for 50 years or however long it's been, it just gets tiring. So these are some other pictures during Mark and Smuggler's Gulch. Smuggler's Gulch actually doesn't look like that anymore, right? And the border, yeah, they changed it a lot. I could show you hundreds of these pictures, but this is all the trash. They call it the plug within the river valley. It's I'm not scientific at all, so I'll stop right there. But it's where all the trash just gets caught. And these are some other areas in the river valley that we've done cleanups and tried to dig out this trash, but it's too much. Just some more facts about the tires, how many tires wash across the border every year, and then how I mentioned how we're exporting the tires, and then it comes right back. So some other things that we've done is Wild Coast had created a tire bill, and it's really the tire bill is trying to create programs in Mexico to make use of these recycled tires, and so we can really see something being done with that fee that we pay. We want to see something done with the tires. We want to see the federal government actually do something. So, just more pictures. And then this is where Jeff mentioned the sediment basin. There's a trash plume collection. And this is actually the first day of the rainfall, and that's 2 hours. Did I say that right or not? And it's, yeah, that's all plastic. And that's Danielle actually upright carrying tires. So those are all the tires that get caught in the basins, and it takes manpower to go in there and remove them. So if you guys ever want to help out with that too, let me know. I'll be on time here. And then just the sediment. That's a picture I took at Smuggler's Gulch with a frog caught. That was a living frog, just caught in that sediment. And that's an old picture. I think Jeff showed that same one of just how the sediment chokes out all that estuary and river valley and prevents it from doing its job of capturing that sewage and trash. And then these are just some, that website up there, SKUs. If you want to write that down, that's really what we check before we surf an IB to see what the plume is doing. And it actually tracks the bacteria count after it enters the ocean and where that plume is headed. And we actually just spent all day today, the IBWC, which is the International Boundary Water Commission, is the treatment plant on the US side, and they treat that water that comes from Mexico. There's 2 diverters that come into the US side, and there was a system malfunction where the software just stopped working, and this was about a week ago. And those diverters shut off on the Mexico side, so the sewage, which should be treating at 25 million gallons a day, just wasn't treating it at all for a week. And it's about 5 to 6 million gallons of that just going straight into the river and out to the ocean. And unfortunately, I mentioned the plume tracker, it saw the bacteria count south, so it wasn't quite in the area where we were surfing, which is north of the seacoast, so they didn't put beach advisories out of the close signs. So there were people out there surfing, and lo and behold, yesterday, like within minutes, the current and the wind changed, and the bacteria was right up there in that surf impact zone. And they put the signs out there, but how many people had already surfed that day? I caught wind of it yesterday morning, just randomly talking to the Department of Health water tester. There's one water tester in the whole city of San Diego, and it's not his fault. I mean, he has no funding. We're actually cutting the fund. The federal government is cutting funding for water testing in the state of California. I don't know if you know that. For 2013, they're debating doing that, and that's a small drop in the bucket. It's like $8 million, maybe. And no, they don't want it. They think that money shouldn't be going to our public health and knowing when the beaches are closed. So unfortunately, people didn't know until after the fact, and so we barked about it and sent emails to the IBWC and asked them, why was it closed? Why wasn't it closed a week ago when the spill actually happened? And there's an article that's going to be in the Voice of San Diego tonight, so definitely read that, kind of talking about what happened, and hopefully we'll see some turnaround from it. We'll see some protocols set in place where there will be more water testing done, that the federal government will be held accountable, and we'll try to get these programs up and running so we can monitor it more. But you'll see how last year, 239 days out of the year, Porterfield State Park was closed. And 78 days, Imperial Beach was closed. And this year is about 131 days. And then this is just, who does it affect? It affects us all: surfers, divers, fishermen, beach users, ranchers, business owners, shapers like Jay Novak, he isn't shaping boards, other local surf companies. There's been economic studies on how much waves are worth and how much money they bring into local beach towns, and that's something currently being done with Tijuana Sluice. So the military used to train down there, they don't anymore. Border Patrol agents went out class action lawsuits to receive hazardous work pay, and it just costs us millions of dollars. So it affects us all more than we realize, more than the government realizes. Well, they do realize. This is the sluice. These are just some surfing pictures. This is actually smaller day. This is the first notch working. This is a local Union Tribune cartoon from last year's spill that happened on the Mexico side. And it's kind of a joke, they make jokes out of it, but It's really what you got to do during the winter, you have to wear a hazmat suit. More pictures of the sloughs. I mean, if it were like this at the cliffs right out here, you would see like 400 people. And this is not one person out there because it had just rained the day before. And sewage. This is actually a permanent closure sign at the end of Seacoast, south of Seacoast Drive. And that's south of there is where that I mentioned 239 days that it was closed last year. That's why they put up a permanent sign. And they just flip that up or flip it down, put it back up, and it's open. And then this is actually efforts that are being done in Mexico with their treatment plants. They're actually treating sewage at a higher level than the U.S. is treating it here at the Tijuana treatment plant. So I just put some of these stats. And we actually went on a tour there last year and got to see what they've been doing. And you know, they're so passionate about treating at a secondary and tertiary level. And it's just, you don't see that level of excitement on the U.S. side for treating sewage and where it's going. You know, it's not an exciting thing treating sewage. Unfortunately, it's something we all have to realize that when we flush that toilet, it's going somewhere and someone's managing that. It costs money. And Mexico actually is working on making their treatment plants better, and we applaud them for that. And so here's some volunteer efforts for everyone in this room that you can do, and this is what we do with Surfrider. Water testing. Monthly we go out there and we take samples upstream in the river valley. So it's source point testing to see, test for pesticides, test for heavy metals coming from the maquiladora factories that are a lot of U.S. factories on the Mexico side. I mentioned that the funding in 2013 is being eliminated. That's the Beach Act program. So we're trying to send out these action alerts to the federal government, emails to Obama, and we're telling them, look, we need to keep this testing in place. And you can see those test results on that right-hand side. Guess which one's the Tijuana River Valley? So it's like pictures like that we send to local politicians and federal agencies and show them, like, the river valley is on the 303D impact list, and that's unfortunate, but we still have to put this data out there and let them know that we care and we want action to be done. We have cleanups, native plant restoration, which Danielle is in charge of, so if you're interested in that. It's binational efforts. There's a lot of nonprofits in Mexico that are doing a lot of great work that we're working with. I mentioned working with local, state, and federal agencies. I mentioned the expansion of Tijuana sewer infrastructure. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, they're doing a lot of work with Mexico treatment plants and also funding grants here at the Tijuana estuary and with groups like Wild Coast, and then just grassroots efforts. And that's one of them that we had. That's a Power for Clean Water at the OB Pier. And then the Tijuana River Action Network is, since there are a lot of agencies, nonprofits, NGOs as they're called, like Surfrider, Wild Coast, Coastkeeper, I'm sure you've heard a lot of these names. We're all doing the same thing, so why not work together? So that's why we created this action network, and that's kind of our mission statement that I have there in English and Spanish. And then some of these groups, I think you guys have worked with Border Encuentro, with Dan Waldman, and that's his on the bottom left-hand corner. That's their new logo. Yeah, I mean, we're all doing the same thing. I mean, it's at different levels, and we meet once in a while, quarterly basis a year, and we just kind of pick each other's brains. We put together this Tijuana River Action Month, which is during the month of October. And the reason we do October is because it's many reasons, but it's right before the wet season when the winter rains come, so we can get into the river valley and clean up all that trash. It actually takes that long for it to dry. So once it stops raining, after this last rainfall we get, it's probably going to take until August for that area to be dry, and we can go in there and remove the trash. And then also it's bird nesting season. That's the most important reason for all of us. And we've been educated on that. And they nest in the trash and the tires, a lot of these endangered species. So we want to respect that and wait till they've done the thing and all that. So here's some pictures from last year's event. That's Kyle on the left-hand side of the wheelbarrow. And then on the right-hand side middle picture, that's actually a house that was built in, I'm going to say it's wrong, but Las Hormiguitas. Hormiguitas, the native plant, they have a native plant garden there, and these guys are called Four Walls International. Great group of guys, young guys, that actually go in and they build these sustainable houses out of tires, plastic, fully off the grid, gray water system in place, compostable toilets, and they're going down in these Mexican neighborhoods and building these because Mexican city officials are letting them do it, but they can't do it here in the U.S. They've done a couple on private land, but we look at that as like not meeting building code and all that stuff. But it's amazing work these guys are doing, and it's as Jeff mentioned, it's showing that we can make use of this trash that's in there. And then this is just some stats from last year's event. I mentioned it was 1 month. We had 29 events, and we had over 4,000 participants and about 2,000 volunteers, 70 hours, 6 miles of trails improved, 3 acres of habitat, 58,000 pounds of trash, 351 tires, 5,000 pounds of recyclables, and 1,230 native plants planted. And that is just awesome. And I just want to show that we do have fun too. It's not just digging tires out. We give away surfboards, and the guy who won the surfboard last year is the coolest guy ever, and he's been volunteering how long? Forever. And so we just thought it was really cool that he won the surfboard, but he's never surfed before. And then these are just some upcoming events. If you guys want to come out this weekend, actually, is that still happening? Tijuana Estuary from 9 to 12 p.m. is having a stewardship event.
And we've got a van going from here.
Oh, cool. So yeah, there's a van going.
So we're meeting 8:15 at the Cross.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you have any questions, let Danielle know or myself. And I mentioned that Action Network where all these groups get together and we meet. And we used to meet in like a room like this, but it was kind of boring. So we started going to like sustainable restaurants and some local bars and wine bars. So we kind of make it fun. But if you're not 21, we'll go to restaurants. And then I mentioned citizen water quality training at Coastkeeper's office. And we have one coming up in 2 weeks, but you have to be trained. So if you have a dire need to go in the next 2 weeks, you can definitely come along with us, but you just can't actually take the samples. We can kind of show you where we go and give you a little tour. But if you actually want to get trained, that's going to be on May 19th at Coastkeeper's office. And it's an all-day thing, because you get trained in the morning, and then you come out and you meet Kyle and I, and then we go out and take water samples at Dairy Mart Bridge where that nasty river's flowing. It's pretty gnarly. So wear jeans and boots and stuff. It's not. Probably just totally talk you guys out doing it. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions, or did I go?
We just have about 5 minutes, and are there any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Dan?
Is the water testing data available? Would that be available at the SG Coastkeeper website?
Yes, it's all available. It's at that website, and then if you click on the water quality monitoring,
Okay.
there's another link. It's pretty hard to get to. It's like just multiple layers, but I'll send you the information if you need it. We're working on making it more available to the public, so it's not 8 clicks. It's actually right there when you go to the site. So.
The beach cleanup and
Oh yeah, there's 2 other events that Kyle's going to talk about.
Actually, this Saturday down at South Garbage, we've got a beach cleanup. It's from 9 to 11. So let's just show up, and it's going to be up at the parking lot right above South Garbage. And on Sunday, it's Ocean Friendly Gardens. It's going to be like a community walkthrough. They have 10 yards that they're going to go to, and they're going to point out if it's actually sustainable for if it's got native plants and
Retain water.
retain water and everything like that. So that's going to be Sunday from 9 to 11, and that's at Sunset Cliffs and Hill. And you're supposed to RSVP, but if you can't RSVP and you just show up,
You can just show up, and it's
tell them I sent you. And
easy going. We get coffee and just walk around the neighborhood and chat. It's a great way to meet some local activists.
That's this Sunday?
yes.
This Sunday.
Well, if we could just have a round of applause for both of our speakers.
And just a special thank you to Daniel Burden, all his work for putting this together. Also, thank you to Melissa Tucker and Electrical Ministries for her and that's our evening. So stick around. Our guests will be here a little bit longer. If you have some personal questions, by all means, drain the coffee, please. You know, some of it's decaf. You know, you don't want to stay away too late. But if you got to study and finish that paper, there's some caffeinated stuff back there.
Paper.